Retro Now.
Hi, this is Emily Swallow, the Armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we are going to round up some recent Star Wars news in this episode. Before we get started, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody where we can be found on social media?
Of course, Dennis. We are so easy to find. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
And that reminds me, I really need to go back and update Facebook because I don't think I put any of the episodes that came out over Thanksgiving on there. My bad. So I'll make sure I get that done.
It's the holiday,
Yeah, what can I say? And it's not, the automation thing is not working so well right now, but we'll see what happens. Okay. There's the line, signals boosted to maximum output. Shield is down. We're now broadcasting to the galaxy. So yeah, this is the first time Jay and I are recording in 2 weeks. So this is fun.
Yes.
We haven't had our appointment Star Wars for a little while. So did you have a good Thanksgiving, Jay?
We did. It was a different Thanksgiving than what we're used to. So we did a little bit of traveling and the weather was a little dicey, but thank goodness we made it home okay. And it was great to get the family together. But yeah, we had a good one. How about you guys?
Yeah. Thanksgiving was good. Did a turkey trot, had lots of family in, smoked a brisket for Thanksgiving instead of doing turkey, which turned out really well. I was really happy with that. And we got decorated for Christmas. So I got the tree up and it was fun to put all my regular Star Wars ornaments up there. I got the Boba Fett from The Mandalorian on there, the Mandalorian himself. I've got Anakin and Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, R2 and 3PO. There's a Darth Vader. I got lots of Star Wars ornaments, put out my Star Wars nutcrackers. So that was fun. I love doing that every year. And just getting a kick that I have a wife and family that indulges my geek side when it comes to those type of things. But you set up for Christmas? Are you ready to go?
Not completely just yet. I do all of my house stuff first. And so I've got the inside of the house mostly done at this point, and I go all out. Like every single room in the house pretty much is decked out with stuff. So I haven't put the tree up yet, and that's where the majority of my Star Wars stuff is because like you, I have all of the ornaments, the keepsake ornaments and that type of thing. But I did update my Darth Vader mug that I talked about before on World Between Worlds, the one that I had the succulents in. So he now has beautiful poinsettias and lovely holly branches coming out of the top of his where would be his helmet. So that was fun to do and play around with. And then I have a couple of other things, like I have a Boba Fett inspired little thing that says Boba, it's warm, it's cold outside, and little things like that. So not a ton of Star Wars stuff inside the house, but I will, like I said, when I get the tree up, which hoping will be this weekend. So we will see if that actually ends up happening or not. But because it's definitely a two-person job, because we put it on kind of a pedestal and we have these really big picture windows. So it's actually a 9-foot tree, and we put it on a like maybe 2.5-foot pedestal. So it's huge. I need this huge ladder to get up to the top. But I will be watching Attack of the Clones while I do that. I think I mentioned that before. That is my tradition since the kids were little. But I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite Christmas decoration that you have? Doesn't have to be Star Wars oriented. And what's your most like cutchy one, the one that's kind of corny, but you still love it and you put it out?
Oof. Well, the answer to that question is stories that I'm not probably at liberty to tell because it might embarrass some people because, my kids is what I'm talking about. But
Sure.
I've got a lot of holiday decorations that have meaning behind them at this point. And so we could do an entire episode about that. And so I'm not going to go into all of them. I mentioned the Star Wars Nutcrackers, and I absolutely love those. I can't remember how many years ago it was that we got them, but the boys were just really interested in the Nutcrackers we got, and of course they were interested in Star Wars, and so I went out and I found these Star Wars Nutcrackers online, and I love having them out on display. But when it comes to other ornaments, I've started looking for ornaments on various trips and vacations, and so there were a couple I brought back from when we went to the Mediterranean a couple of years ago that are on the tree now. That was it's just fun looking at them and remembering that trip. And then there's just some others like the Anakin and Ahsoka that I'm talking about. We got those so many years ago when the boys were little, and they were Anakin and Ahsoka were the heroes that they looked up to at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
Anakin's lightsaber the blade is snapped off, but we still put them on the tree, and that's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, I could go through so many ornaments that are on my tree and tell you a story behind them. But like I said, that would be like 30 or 40 minutes later before, and I would not sure I'd be done. But how about you?
Oh, I want to say I love that. And
Mm.
I really do treasure those kinds of memories. I mean, that's what the holidays are all about and evoking some of those memories. We actually, speaking of ornaments, just got one. They're lovebirds from Sitka, Alaska. So that reminds
Mm.
me, I actually have it hanging on the hutch right now. So I have to remember to take it off my hutch and put it on on the tree. But yeah, those things that the kids made when they were little, I still
Mhm.
have a pasta wreath that I put up every year that one of my kids made, but my favorite one that was given to me, I guess you could say, or made, was when my oldest, who is now 26, was in uh, grade school. I think he might have even been in preschool at the time. I bet it was preschool. And he did this painting, this little finger painting, and when he brought it home, it was on one of those big tear off sheets, that you get, like those big pads that they had on easels when the kids were little. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh, you did Santa." And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah." Nobody, Dennis, let me just tell you, no one else sees the Santa in this but me. And I
Yeah.
sent you a picture of it earlier. And I even when I put it up the other day, I said to my husband, I said, "You still don't see the Santa, do you?" He goes, "Nope." And I said, "All right, here's his eye. Here's this. Here's that. This is where you're looking. This is what I'm doing." Nope, still don't see it. So I love the fact that I'm like the only person that actually sees the Santa, but that's what makes it so special, I think.
It's very abstract, but now
It
that
is.
you've told me what that picture is, I can kind of see it.
Can you
Uh,
see it? He's kind of
yeah.
bending down, the big black spot is his eyeball,
Yep.
and he's
Yep.
looking down. Oh my gosh, see, you're like
Mhm.
the only. That's because we have great minds, think alike kinda thing, right? I mean, we're always on the same wavelength, but oh my gosh, I love the fact that you can actually see that. But my most kitschy decoration is, and this goes all the way back to a former time, I guess you could say, when we were all bowling. My kids bowled all the way up through high school and everything like that. It's this Santa Claus, and he's got his sleeves rolled up and his muscles showing, and he's bowling. And one of the reindeer is keeping score at those old fashioned
Yeah.
scorekeeper console kinds of things. But what's so fun about it is that whenever you, like, I can tap it and it'll make this crashing sound, almost like glass breaking, but it's supposed to be the pins that are made out of, like ornament glass that are shattering because Santa just got a strike. And it lights
Mhm.
up, and the bowling alley is actually a mirror. And it's so much fun. And what's so funny is that sometimes as you're walking past it, if you make enough vibration on the floor, you'll hear this. Then the dogs start barking and all kinds of things. So it is like the ugliest decoration ever, but I love it just because my kids loved it when they were
Yeah.
little. And so I continue to put it out every single year.
Yeah. Yeah. I have decorations that we keep solely because I don't know that my kids care about them now, but they loved them when they were little,
Right.
and for that reason, I love them. So,
Yes. Yes.
all right, all sounds fantastic. But so let's go ahead and get into some Star Wars news. And uh, most of our beginning stories all have to do with Star Wars Starfighter, and most of them come from Shawn Levy doing interviews as he's supporting season 5 of Stranger Things. And of course, doesn't matter. Everyone's asking him about Star Wars Starfighter while he's doing that.
Of course.
Yeah. So starting with a interview that he did with Vanity Fair, he was talking about how he got this job. And he was going on to say that when word got out that Disney had acquired Lucasfilm and they were going to sort of relaunch the film franchise, I was one of dozens of directors who raised their hand and let me know to anyone who would listen that we would that it would be a dream. But the dream sort of receded because nothing came of it, and I kept busy doing lots of my own stuff. So to get that call from Kathleen Kennedy in August of 2022, I literally remembered where I was. She said, "I want you to do a Star Wars movie." I asked the obvious question, which one? What's it a prequel to? What's it a sequel to? And the immediate answer was, whatever one you want, make it feel like your movies feel. It was just this incredibly empowering opportunity. And then the follow-up question to that was, when Kathleen Kennedy came to you and said, make your movie, what ended up being your pitch to her? And Sean's response was, I knew the feeling that she wanted. I know the aspects of my work that have worked and that she was alluding to. It is sort of a combination of humor and heart with an adventure. The first step was I chose screenwriter Jonathan Tropper, with whom I've done small movies and big movies. We just started talking, and it led to months of dreaming and brainstorming, rejecting ideas, embracing others. And little by little, it led to us to a theme that was really interesting to me and some characters that were interesting to me. I can't give anything more than that away. So we got more comments from Shawn Levy to come from other outlets here in just a second. I was very intrigued by this, Jay, but what do you make of it?
Well, we had talked a little bit about the idea that he was given basically full creative license to do anything that he wanted, because in
Mm-hmm.
the past, with a lot of these other directors and creatives, it was very specific. This was the vision, this is what we wanted. We've talked about other directors, screenwriters, et cetera, being fired because or let go because they didn't seem to fit the mold, or they didn't, have the right trajectory, so to speak, that they were looking for. So to hear, Kathleen Kennedy basically say whatever you want, you have full creative license. That's he had to be a kid in a candy store
Mm-hmm.
when that happened, and rightfully so. And when she said, make it your movie, whatever you want. I mean, wow, that's huge. I have seen, I don't know if you've been seeing this kind of flittering around, that apparently Return of the Jedi was one of his major kind of inspirations for this movie. Had you seen that?
Oh, I've heard things. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So we'll see if it has any of that feel, if that comes to pass. But what were your thoughts?
well, it's interesting because, looking back on what we've had in the past 10 years on this, and we're all aware of the creative differences that have arisen with various directors and people who are creating Star Wars movies. Look what happened to Solo, a Star Wars movie. And so the fact that Kathleen Kennedy said, I want you to make a Shawn Levy Star Wars movie, I'm paraphrasing here, is pretty cool. And the reason why I say that is because look at Andor. That is like
Mhm.
the least Star Wars formulaic Star Wars ever, and it worked, and it was so totally Star Wars as a result of it. uh,
Right.
it's that makes no sense when you look at the words that just came out of my mouth, but in a way it does. That it's we got this incredible Star Wars project that fits nicely in the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't carry that Star Wars sheen that the sequel trilogy movies have, that The Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett have. And I think that's good for Star Wars.
Mhm.
It doesn't always work when it comes down to, I'm thinking, you know, the Acolyte is divided a lot of people. It's got some really great things that are pure Star Wars, the lightsaber battles and stuff, some of the best that we've seen since the Phantom Menace. But the over how dark it is, the tone and the message that's getting across is very different than anything that came out before it. And people, it's debatable whether it works or not. So it's intriguing. I really am excited for this movie. I think, and this is not to disparage The Mandalorian and Grogu, but we kind of talked about this a few weeks ago. It's the the Mandalorian and Grogu, we know the characters, right? We know Mando, we know Grogu, we know Zeb. A lot of these characters we've seen, and that's great. We love those type of things. And so what we're getting is the big unknown is an adventure. We don't know the characters that are in Starfighter, other than
Yeah.
kind of snippets that we got about. We don't really even know that much about the story in this. All we know is it's in a new era. 5 years after the Rise of Skywalker, and with characters that don't have a background before, and that's kind of exciting.
Oh,
So it's just
yes.
and this has got me feeling the most similar to that lead up we got to The Force Awakens than anything that's happened since, because we just don't, again, we don't have as much to go by as we did with
Mhm.
all these other movies and projects that have come. So anyways,
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good blend between, as you said, the hype to The Force Awakens. There was a lot of comfort characters in that
Mhm.
movie that we knew of as well, but yet there was a lot of unknowns, and with this one, it's all unknowns,
Yep.
and I think that that's so cool, and it kind of leaves us almost in that same frame of mind as when The Mandalorian started, because
Hmm.
there was so much mystery
Yeah.
behind, who is the Mandalorian and all these new characters and yada yada yada. So, yeah, I think that, yeah, as you pointed out with Andor, there's Star Wars fans have a very interesting way of being magnetized
Mhm.
towards certain projects. And there's not really been one specific type of recipe that has satisfied everybody until it comes out. And
Right.
like you said with Andor, it was kind of the non-Star Wars Star Wars that everybody loved. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's that bit of intrigue with this one that I'm really digging.
Yeah. We've all seen that meme that's been out there, which is like, Star Wars fans, we want something new. Okay, here's something new. Well, not like that. Okay, we want
Right.
something that's like what we had before. Okay, how about this? Well, that's just the same thing. Well, you said it's just back and forth, and there's
For
a sweet
real.
spot. It's hard to hit, but okay. Well, let's get on to the next one. So, speaking with Collider again, while promoting Stranger Things, he was asked about Starfighter, and we've heard these comments or very similar ones before, where he described it as a non-sequel, non-prequel that inherits legacy themes, and that they're trying to do something new with the spirit of play and with big hard adventure and moments of real levity, and they're taking that tone as their north star. And then again, he reiterated that Lucasfilm has been encouraging of him doing something new. It's kind of funny. I've read a lot of these interviews, and
Mhm.
I think he's been asked this question so many times that a lot of times he gets almost robotic with the answer. It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that sounded good the last time I said it." So he repeats a lot of the same thing, and I don't blame him. I mean, it's he can only say so much about this movie because of NDAs and schedules about when they're going to release information. But yeah, I mean, I don't like I said, I feel like we've seen comments very similar to this before,
Yes. Mhm.
but again, just promoting the newness of everything, but trying to invoke that spirit of the old George Lucas movies seems pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and I think that there's that sense of nostalgia too that just everyone, I don't care what generation of Star Wars fan you are, really appreciates.
Oh yeah, definitely. But this third story that I took some notes from is perhaps the most interesting one to me. So on a recent episode of On Film with Kevin McCarthy, he was talking about this, and he said on Starfighter we had a whole different idea for something in the third act, and then things didn't align and I was forced to come up with a new idea. And I'm literally right now shooting that section of the movie. And every day I'm grateful that the way I was supposed to do it didn't work out, because the new idea that it forced me to explore is so much better than the original idea would have been. And so let's pause right there because these are the comments that we'll can talk about in a second. That's fascinating that
Mhm.
whatever he had in mind for the third act wasn't going to work. And so it made him come up with something different. And what they came up with in the moment ends up being something he's more excited about there. What do you think?
Well, what I really appreciate about that statement is the fact that it's obvious that Shawn Levy is not one of those kind of people that from a creative aspect is like, "Nope, this is what I wanted to do. I'm gonna make this work." I don't care what it takes. This was the story. He's willing to let it evolve, and he's willing to, go back to the drawing board if he has to and say, okay, well, this isn't working. Let's try something different. And the fact that he said that he's grateful for those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, because sometimes, mistakes are the best way to learn from something. And so maybe that's part of where he's at in this process right now, and just saying, wow, that was a okay idea. Glad that didn't work out, because this one's even better. And just the fact that he's willing to do that. I dig that.
Yeah. Here's the other thing that stands out to me about this. This is not the first time that something wasn't working on a Star Wars movie. And what ended up happening? In Rogue One,
Yep.
they bring in Tony Gilroy to do rewrites, and they redo like 40% of the movies. In Solo, Kathleen Kennedy and company were not getting along with Lord and Miller, so they bring in Ron Howard and they redo like almost even more of the movie there. But
Mhm.
in this situation, it doesn't sound like it's a creative difference with Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm here. It is just this isn't working. What we were
Right.
trying to do is not working. And so rather than figuring that out later, they figured it out earlier, and they're taking that step to fix it now. And
Right.
there, so that's kind of exciting. I like that idea where we're not. Look, I think Rogue One is one of the best Star Wars movies out there, and so it benefited from whatever they ended up doing there. But
Mhm.
Solo, I like an awful lot. It's not my top 4 or 5 Star Wars movies out there, but I don't know. I mean, I trust them that it's just whatever it was come up with was just not doing it. So the change needed to be made. But then again, Lord and Miller have done other things that I'm really fond of. So who knows?
Oh, sure. And yeah, and what I'm getting at too is the fact that he's willing to do this before and not be rigid to the
Yeah.
point where somebody else has to step in to quote unquote fix it. He's willing to say, all right, yeah, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't seem right. This isn't going to work later on. This doesn't fit. So let's address it now.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yep.
The other comment to take away from that interview was he was talking about shooting and the process of making this movie. And he said, the first few weeks of shooting, it felt like this oppressive sort of cloud over me because every day they would come to me. It's 100 questions a day. And especially Starfighter, it's not a sequel, it's not a prequel, it's not legacy characters. And it's not in a period of time in the galaxy that's ever been explored. What this means is that we are inventing everything in the movie, and the desire to make design choices, character choices, planet choices, costume choices, droid choices, alien choices, all of it needs to feel Star Warsy. Okay. That's a repetition of some of the stuff we've already talked about, but there's a few other new things there. What stands out to you?
Well, just the fact that he's so willing to just make sure that it is Star Wars.
Yeah.
That, even though these are new things and that they're exploring new things, that there's this desire to make sure that everything still remains true to the original aesthetic and that original Star Wars design and feel. So again, hats off to Shawn Levy for that. And I mean, it's honestly, it's not the first time that he's kind of had to use somebody else's vision, if you will, because Stranger Things was created by the Duffer Brothers. And so that is their vision, but he had to create all of these new things as well. And let me just tell you, I am a big Stranger Things fan, and I'm halfway through season 5, chef's kiss. So, this is not his first rodeo when it
Right.
comes to someone else's creative vision. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I still never watched Stranger Things, but I want to at some point. Yeah. Okay. So the thing here, like grabs my I trust this. I trust him and what he's done. I mean, it was great on Deadpool 3, but that last sentence and the desire to make design choices, character choices, planet choices, costume choices, droid choices, alien choices, all of it needs to feel Star Warsy. Okay. The What's sticking out to me the most here is the planet choices, droid choices, alien choices here. One of the things we love about Star Wars, and I wish they'd done more of in, say, the sequel trilogy, is use more of our legacy aliens, use more of our legacy droids and stuff like that. Yeah, you can create some new stuff, but the sequel trilogy largely moved away into new designs, and like I said, you don't have to use. It doesn't have to be all Twi'lek, Rodians, Wookiees. Pick all your classic original trilogy, prequel trilogy, aliens, stuff like that. There's room for new ones, but I kind of felt like the sequel trilogy leaned a little too much into the new, and the brand new planets. I mean, there was very little when it came to using some of our legacy worlds. And again, they don't all have to be used. And there is room definitely create new ones, but I think there's some value in quote unquote recycling. And that's not a pejorative term in this sense. It's like, this is a universe that we're all familiar with, that we grew up with. And well, I want new stories. I do want some of it grounded in the familiar. And so
Mhm.
I like when he says that it needs to feel Star Warsy. That's great. You can accomplish that by giving us a lot of those traditional elements in a new way, with
Yes.
some new mixed in there. So I guess that's what I'm hoping for in this situation.
No, I can totally see what you're saying there, and you're absolutely right. And I feel the exact same way about, there that fine line between the old and the new, that the story, the characters and everything, they still have to be relatable in a sense that they feel like home.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we don't want necessarily 100% new things, but just the fact that we're getting his design choices is going to be what I think is the most interesting thing about it, and hopefully blending the old with the new, for sure.
Great. Great. Okay, so he's not the only one talking about Starfighter. Mia Goth was on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast, and so she was asked a bit about her role in Starfighter, and a lot of these questions come from the aspect of auditioning for the role. But she was asked about how her audition went, what that was, and she was asked if she auditioned with Shawn Levy and Ryan Gosling, and were they in the room? And she said, "Well, actually, the audition was via Zoom, and it was with Shawn Levy." And then they asked her about, what kind of a fan of Star Wars is with her, and she had said that she was a fan of the George Lucas movies. She had watched them with her dad while she was growing up, and beyond that, she's having an incredible time. And then she went on to describe Shawn Levy as being electric, and that his persona has a trickle down effect that's contagious with the rest of the crew. And she really, really likes her characters, which she describes as very cool. I don't know that there's a whole lot to take away from that, but everyone's so buttoned up when it comes to talking about this movie, and she basically told us as much as she could on
Sure.
that. But I'm not terribly familiar with her as an actress here, but it's and you just kind of there she auditioned via Zoom. That's a sign of our times, I suppose.
Right. Isn't that the
But
truth?
yeah, but she does have some appreciation for these movies from watching them with her dad. We were just talking about nostalgia with Christmas decorations. There we go. But she's very fond of this character that she gets to inhabit.
Yes, indeed. And I, as well, am not super familiar with her, but again, I think that's kind of the fun part about bringing someone that is, I don't want to say relatively unknown, because just because she's not known to me doesn't mean that she's not very well known.
Right.
But at any rate, yeah, just the fact that she loves her character. And I think just her saying that Shawn Levy is electric is really good to hear, because sometimes directors can feel almost unreachable, in a
Right.
way that you do what they say and it's like cut at the end of the day, and that type of thing. But it sounds like he's really into, every aspect of everything that's going on. Kind of reminds me a little bit of how we've heard Taika Waititi being,
Hmm.
explained to work with as well, kind of eccentric and fun, but yet not unapproachable. So I think that's really cool to hear.
Indeed, indeed. All right. So the last bit of news that we have about Starfighter is that it's been announced that Thomas Newman will be creating the score for this movie. So uh, maybe not a name that is as recognizable as John Williams, but he has been nominated for 15 Oscars. And his notable work includes the score for The Shawshank Redemption, Finding Nemo, 1917, Skyfall, and Wall-E. So I've seen a few of those, and I do remember the music being good. What do you think about Thomas Newman being the conductor for the score of Starfighter?
Oh my gosh, as soon as I saw his name, I was like, "Shawshank Redemption," one of my favorite movies that's not Star Wars of all time, so that made me so happy. He also did Meet Joe Black, which I think you've said you have not seen that movie before. It has Brad
No,
Pitt.
I have seen it,
Oh,
and
you have seen it?
you wanna
Didn't
know
like
why I saw it?
it? Yeah?
Because that's how you got to see the Phantom Menace trailer.
Oh, that's right, that's we have talked about this.
Yes, which I
That's
was not
right.
particularly a fan of the movie, but I stuck around to see the trailer both before and after Meet Joe Black.
That's right, I remember that story now, but, at any rate, I love that movie,
Yeah.
and so but I Shawshank Redemption, and of course, Finding Nemo, I mean, come on, those are amazing, so yay, very excited about this.
Yeah, Wall-E, that's got a great score as well,
Yeah,
but
heck yeah.
15 Oscar nominations, though. This man is due for a win,
I
so
didn't realize
come
he
on.
had that many, quite
Yeah.
honestly.
I didn't know either until I looked him up on IMDb, but
Mhm.
I found. Alright,
Nice.
so one last story. I don't know if this is really news, but everyone is reporting it as news. We talked about this before, and of course, we know that The Mandalorian and Grogu are coming out on May 22nd, and in conjunction with that, they're going to be updating the Smuggler's Run attractions in Galaxy's Edge at both Walt Disney World and Disneyland on the exact same day. But because both the parks on their social media feeds put out schedules for all the things that are coming next year, everyone's reporting this like we just found out.
Hmm,
So we're talking about it just because everyone else is on there. We've known ever since
right.
that they were going to do this, but at any rate, yeah, we've talked about it before, and I'm excited for an update. I don't know when I'll ever get to experience it, but uh, maybe Star Wars Celebration 2027 in LA. I can skip down to Disneyland and go check it out. I don't know. We'll find out. But
Yeah.
at any rate, it's there we are, and I'm looking forward to that. I like that attraction. I know there are some that think it could have been more than what it is, and I can get it. I mean, there's not as much to do if you're not a pilot. If you're a gunner, you're just kind of hitting the same button over and over and over again. If you're an engineer, you have even less to do. You and I got to do that attraction together. We were the pilots. We had a fantastic time
Oh my
doing
gosh,
it.
that was hilarious.
So yeah, but they've described the update to this ride as giving everybody else in the cockpit more things to do. So I'm eager to check that out.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's probably going to be my only opportunity to do so is Star Wars Celebration in 2027 because I know I'm not gonna get out there between now and then, which is fine. So we'll have to just make sure that those who do, we get the full update from them, and, you never know, you might get out there before me.
Well,
I hope you do.
we'll see. But at my travel schedule between now and then is kind of full. So at any rate, look for Jay and I talking about an updated Smuggler's Run experience sometime in 2027 after Star Wars Celebration. We'll report
Yes.
back to you then in about 200 some odd episodes. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's news. Thank you all for joining us here on Podcast Stardust as we went through it. We hope you've enjoyed the discussion. And if so, and you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. We appreciate your ratings and reviews. Those do help the show grow, and we're always looking for those opportunities. If you want to find the entire back catalog of the show, you can head over to retrozapp.com where all previous 973 episodes can be found. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and where else they can find us online?
Sure thing, Dennis. We are very easily found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And we do have some Pinterest boards that we maintain. I've got a few new things to put up there, especially now that we're getting into the holiday season. So you have to check those boards out. And then we also have our two YouTube outlets, which includes the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and share those out. And also on Spotify. And please let us know if we showed up on your Spotify Wrapped as one of your top podcasts of the year and share that to your stories, and we will definitely reshare that as well. And if you'd like to email us, you can do so at podcaststardust@gmail.com. Please send us your questions. We're looking for listener questions to put it together into a listener question episode. So We'd love to be able to start the new year with an episode like that. And then if you are in need of some new Podcast Stardust swag, or you would like to gift something for the holidays, we do have our TeePublic store. The link for that is in our show notes, and there are 7 different show logos to choose from. So make sure you check that out. And just want to give a quick shout out to Daz Davies for sporting his Podcast Stardust t-shirt at a recent con when he met Doctor Who. What is her name? Help me out. I just blanked.
Yeah, I don't watch Doctor Who, so that's kind of
well, yeah, it was joked that we need to do a Doctor Who podcast now. But at any rate, thanks, Daz, for sporting that. So if anybody else wants to pick one of those up, once again, hit up that link in our show notes.
Yeah, it was Mary Purdue who made the joke about Podcast Stardust.
Yes,
Doctor Who series. So I guess I'd have to start watching. But right,
same.
Okay. Upcoming on the show on Monday, we are wrapping up our coverage of Volume 3 of Star Wars Visions. And then on Wednesday, we have an early edition of World Between Worlds, where Jay is going to share some last-minute Star Wars gift ideas for the holiday season. So with that, thanks for listening to episode 974 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend. And until next time, may the Force be